The stars shimmered above the quiet town of Willow Creek, their light casting faint shadows on the empty streets below. It was a peaceful night, one that seemed untouched by the troubles of the world. But peace rarely lasts forever. High above the atmosphere, a fleet of ships descended silently, their sleek metallic surfaces glinting in the moonlight. These were not human vessels. They belonged to the Krillians, an alien race whose technology far surpassed anything Earth had ever seen. The townsfolk of Willow Creek didn't notice at first. The sky remained dark, and the ships emitted no sound as they positioned themselves over key locations across the globe. By morning, however, the truth became impossible to ignore. A massive holographic projection appeared in the skies, visible even during daylight. The image showed a towering figure with glowing green eyes and sharp angular features. His voice boomed across every television, radio, and smartphone on the planet, speaking perfect English with an eerie calmness. "Humans," the figure began, his tone dripping with disdain. "You are weak. Your species is insignificant compared to the vastness of the universe. We are the Krillians, and we have come to claim what is rightfully ours: your resources, your land, and your future." The message sent shockwaves through humanity. People gathered in streets and living rooms, staring up at the sky in disbelief. Governments scrambled to respond, but their efforts fell futile. When fighter jets tried to intercept the alien ships, they found themselves powerless. The Krillians' energy shields absorbed missiles like raindrops, leaving the pilots frustrated and helpless. News outlets flooded with reports of abductions, ordinary people vanishing without a trace, only to reappear days later with strange marks on their skin and haunted expressions. Jake Miller sat in his small cabin on the outskirts of Willow Creek, watching the broadcast with a mix of anger and disbelief. A wildlife biologist by trade, Jake spent most of his days studying animals in their natural habitats. He had always admired predators, the lions, wolves, and bears that ruled their domains with strength and cunning. But nothing could have prepared him for this new kind of predator. The Krillians weren't just stronger or smarter, they were otherworldly, almost godlike in their superiority. As the days passed, the situation grew worse. Cities fell under martial law as panic spread. Food shortages began to emerge, and rumors of rebellion sparked in underground forums. Yet amidst all the chaos, Jake couldn't shake off a peculiar thought. Humans weren't the only predators on Earth. In fact, some of the planet's deadliest hunters were far smaller and far more fearless than any human soldier. One evening, as he sipped coffee on his porch, Jake's mind wandered back to a documentary he watched years ago about honey badgers. Those scrappy little creatures were notorious for their relentless attitude. They would attack snakes, raid beehives, and take on animals 10 times their size without hesitation. Even lions avoided them because of their unpredictable ferocity. At the time, Jake had laughed at the idea of comparing humans to honey badgers. Now, though, it didn't seem so funny. What if? He muttered to himself, leaning forward in his chair. Could there be a way to channel that same spirit of defiance? To fight fire with fire, or rather, fearlessness with fearlessness. Before he could dwell on the idea further, his phone buzzed loudly on the table. It was an unknown number. Hesitant but curious, Jake answered. On the other end, a gruff voice introduced itself as General Carter Hayes. "Mr. Miller," the man said, skipping pleasantries entirely, "we need your expertise. There's a meeting tomorrow morning at Fort Carson. Be there." Jake frowned, unsure whether to feel honored or terrified. Whatever the general wanted, it clearly wasn't good news. Still, something deep inside told him this might be his chance to make a difference. And maybe, just maybe, the honey badger wasn't such a crazy idea after all. Jake arrived at Fort Carson early the next morning, his mind racing with questions. The base was bustling with activity. Soldiers hurried past him, their boots echoing on the pavement, while jeeps and trucks rumbled along the narrow roads. He felt out of place in his faded jeans and flannel shirt, clutching a worn notebook filled with scribbled observations about honey badgers and other predators. What could they possibly want from someone like him? Inside the main building, he was led to a secure conference room. Around a large table sat several officers, all wearing stern expressions. At the far end of the table stood General Carter Hayes, a tall man with sharp features and an even sharper gaze. Beside him was a young woman with curly brown hair pulled into a tight ponytail. She looked up as Jake entered, her eyes narrowing slightly before she returned to typing on her laptop. "Mr. Miller," the general said, gesturing for him to sit. "We don't have much time, so let's get straight to it. Dr. Emily Dawson here has been analyzing the Krillian's technology. We're hoping you can offer some unconventional ideas." Jake blinked, unsure where to start. Unconventional. "Sir, I'm just a biologist. I study animals, not aliens." The general leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Exactly. Animals fight differently than we do. They rely on instinct, speed, surprise. Right now, our weapons are useless against those shields. We need something else, something they won't expect." Emily finally looked up, her expression softening. "We've tried everything," she said quietly. "Missiles, lasers, EMPs, nothing works. If we can't break through their defenses, we'll lose this war before it even begins." Jake hesitated, glancing between the two of them. This wasn't what he'd signed up for. But then again, no one had asked permission when the Krillian showed up. Taking a deep breath, he began to speak. "Okay, hear me out. Have you ever heard of a honey badger?" The room fell silent. One of the officers raised an eyebrow. "A what?" "A honey badger," Jake repeated, opening his notebook. "It's a small animal, maybe 2 feet long, but it's fearless. It'll attack snakes, raid beehives, even go after lions if it has to. Other animals avoid it because it's unpredictable. It doesn't back down, no matter how big or dangerous its opponent is." Emily tilted her head, intrigued. "So you're saying we should act like honey badgers?" "Not exactly," Jake replied. "But think about it. The Krillians see us as weak because we're smaller and less advanced. What if we turned that assumption against them? What if we created something inspired by the honey badger, something fast, relentless, and impossible to anticipate?" The general rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Go on." Jake explained his idea. Using advanced materials and engineering, they could design suits for soldiers that mimic the honey badger's traits. Enhanced strength, agility, and durability would allow humans to move unpredictably in combat, overwhelming the aliens with sheer ferocity. It was a long shot, but it might give humanity a fighting chance. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Emily broke the silence. "It's risky, but it could work. With nanotechnology, we could create adaptive suits that respond to the wearer's movements. And we already have prototypes for exoskeletons. They just need refinement." The general nodded slowly. "All right, Mr. Miller, you've got our attention. Let's make this happen. But remember, we're running out of time." As Jake left the meeting, his heart pounded with a mix of excitement and dread. For years, he'd studied animals from afar, never imagining his work would lead to this. Now, he found himself at the center of humanity's last stand. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but one thing was certain. The Krillians had underestimated Earth's most tenacious species, and soon they would learn the hard way. Jake's journey took him to the heart of Africa, where the sun blazed down on sprawling savannas and dense forests. His destination was a wildlife sanctuary run by his longtime friend, Samira Okoro. Samira had dedicated her life to protecting animals, especially those that others often overlooked. When Jake arrived, she was crouched near a watering hole, jotting notes about a group of elephants. Her face lit up when she saw him approaching. "Jake Miller," she said with a grin, standing to greet him. "What brings you all the way out here? Last I heard, you were chasing snakes in Colorado." He forced a smile, though his mind was heavy with the weight of what he'd come to ask. It's complicated, Samara. Can we talk somewhere private? They walked back to her cabin, a modest structure surrounded by tall grass and acacia trees. Inside, the air was cool, and the walls were covered with photographs of animals she'd saved over the years. Jake sat at the small wooden table while Samira poured them both cups of tea. He explained everything: the Krillians, their invasion, and the desperate plan he proposed to the military. By the time he finished, Samira was staring at him, wide-eyed. "You want to use honey badgers?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Against aliens. It sounds crazy, I know," Jake admitted. "But think about it. Honey badgers are fearless, unpredictable, and relentless. If we can replicate even a fraction of that in human soldiers, maybe, just maybe, we can fight back." Samira leaned back in her chair, tapping her fingers against the edge of her mug. After a moment, she sighed. "All right, Jake. Let's say I believe you. How do you plan to study these animals without disturbing them? They're not exactly cooperative." Jake pulled out his notebook and flipped to a page filled with sketches and notes. "We'll need to observe them in their natural habitat. Watch how they move, how they attack, how they survive against bigger predators. You've seen them in action before. You know what they're capable of." Samira nodded slowly, her expression softening. "You're right. I have seen them. Once, I watched a honey badger take on 3 jackals at once. It was incredible. But this is dangerous work, Jake. These animals aren't pets. They don't trust humans." "I'm not asking you to tame them," Jake said firmly. "Just help me understand them. We don't have much time." Over the next few days, Samira led Jake deep into the wilderness. They set up cameras near burrows and followed the honey badgers from a safe distance. The creatures lived up to their reputation: fearless and resourceful. One morning, they witnessed a honey badger drag a snake twice its size into its den. Another evening, they saw it raid a beehive, ignoring the angry swarm of bees attacking it. Each observation added to Jake's growing list of insights. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, Emily Dawson worked tirelessly in her lab. She collaborated with engineers to develop prototypes of the honey badger suits, incorporating Jake's findings into the design. The suits were sleek and lightweight, equipped with hydraulic systems to enhance strength and sensors to improve agility. Early tests showed promise, but there were still challenges. The suits overheated quickly, and prolonged use left the wearer exhausted. Back in Africa, Jake and Samira continued their research. Late one night, as they reviewed footage of the honey badgers, Samira spoke quietly. "Do you really think this will work, Jake? I mean, these are aliens we're talking about. What if they're too powerful?" Jake paused, his gaze fixed on the screen showing a honey badger gnawing on a bone. "I don't know, Samira. But I do know this: if we give up now, we've already lost. Humans may not be the strongest or the fastest, but we're smart. And sometimes being smart is enough." Samira smiled faintly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Then let's hope you're right." As the days turned into weeks, Jake felt a flicker of hope. The honey badgers were teaching him more than he'd ever imagined. Maybe, just maybe, humanity stood a chance after all. The first prototypes of the honey badger suits arrived in a secure facility outside Denver. Jake, Samira, and Emily gathered to oversee the testing process. The suits gleamed under the fluorescent lights, their metallic surfaces etched with intricate patterns designed to mimic the flexibility and resilience of a honey badger's body. Soldiers from an elite unit had been selected for the trials, each one eager but nervous about stepping into something so experimental. Corporal Ryan Mitchell was the first to try on the suit. A lean man with sharp features and a quiet confidence, Ryan had seen his share of battles. He stepped into the exoskeleton, letting technicians strap him in. The moment the system powered up, he felt a surge of energy coursing through his limbs. His arms and legs moved with unnatural ease, as if gravity itself had loosened its grip. "This feels strange," Ryan said, flexing his hands. "But good. Emily nodded, her eyes glued to a monitor displaying real-time data from the suit. The hydraulics are boosting your strength by 300%. Try lifting that crate over there. Ryan turned toward a heavy metal container sitting in the corner. Without hesitation, he bent down, gripped it, and lifted it effortlessly above his head. The other soldiers murmured in awe. Even Samira, who had remained skeptical, couldn't help but smile. "Not bad," she said. "But how will it hold up in combat?" That question would soon be answered. Over the next few days, the soldiers trained rigorously, learning to adapt to the suit's capabilities. They practiced dodging simulated enemy fire, scaling walls, and delivering precise strikes. Private Mia Lopez, a wiry woman with quick reflexes, proved especially skilled at using the suit's agility to outmaneuver opponents. Her movements were fluid, almost like dancing, as she darted between obstacles. But the suits weren't perfect. After hours of continuous use, they began to overheat, forcing the wearers to stop and cool down. Prolonged sessions left them physically drained, their muscles aching from the strain. Despite these setbacks, Jake remained optimistic. "We can fix the overheating issue," Emily assured him during a break. "We're working on a cooling system that should stabilize the temperature. As for the fatigue, we'll need to train the soldiers to pace themselves." Jake nodded, though his mind lingered on another concern. The Krillians weren't idle. Reports poured in daily of abductions and resource extraction operations across the globe. Entire towns had been emptied, their inhabitants taken aboard alien ships for unknown purposes. The invaders showed no mercy, and time was running out. One evening, as the team reviewed footage of the training exercises, General Hayes entered the room. His face was grim, his usual composure replaced by urgency. "We've got trouble," he announced. "The Krillians have intercepted communications about this project. They know we're developing something, and they're not happy about it." Jake's heart sank. "How much do they know?" "Enough to send scouts," Hayes replied. "They're probing our defenses, trying to find where we're keeping the suits. We need to accelerate the timeline." Samira frowned, crossing her arms. "Accelerate? These soldiers aren't ready yet. Pushing them too hard could get them killed." "I agree," Jake added. "If we rush this, we risk failure, and failure isn't an option." Hayes sighed, rubbing his temples. "I understand that, but every day we delay gives the Krillians more time to prepare. We have to strike before they figure out what we're planning." The room fell silent as the weight of the situation settled over them. Finally, Emily spoke up. "There might be a way to buy us some time. If we deploy decoys, fake signals or devices emitting the same frequencies as the suits, we could confuse them. Make them think we're further along than we actually are." Jake glanced at her, impressed by her quick thinking. "That could work. It might give us the breathing room we need to finish the upgrades." Hayes nodded slowly. "Do it. Whatever it takes, we can't let them win." As the meeting ended, Jake stared out the window at the darkening sky. The stakes were higher than ever, and the pressure was mounting. But deep down, he believed in the potential of the honey badger suits and in the people wearing them. Humanity's survival depended on their ability to adapt, improvise, and fight back. For now, that belief was enough to keep him going. The plan was set into motion under the cover of darkness. A squad of soldiers, led by Corporal Ryan Mitchell and Private Mia Lopes, prepared for their first real encounter with the Krillians. Equipped with the latest version of the honey badger suits, they moved silently through the outskirts of Cape Town, where reports had confirmed a small group of alien scouts operating. The air was tense, each step deliberate as the team approached the designated zone. Jake stayed behind at the command center, monitoring their progress alongside Emily and General Hayes. Samira joined them, her hands gripping the edge of the table as she watched the live feed from cameras mounted on the suits. "Be careful," she whispered, though no one could hear her. The soldiers reached an abandoned warehouse, its crumbling walls providing perfect cover. Inside, faint blue lights flickered. evidence of Krillian activity. Ryan signaled for his team to spread out, their enhanced agility allowing them to scale debris and slip through narrow gaps with ease. As they entered the building, the hum of alien machinery grew louder. Suddenly, a group of Krillian drones emerged from the shadows, their sleek forms gliding effortlessly toward the intruders. The soldiers froze for a split second before springing into action. Ryan lunged forward, his suit amplifying his strength as he smashed one drone into pieces. Mia darted around another, striking it with precision blows until it collapsed in a heap of sparking circuits. The Krillians reacted quickly, deploying more drones and activating energy shields. But the suits gave the humans an edge. They were faster, more unpredictable, and relentless in their attacks. Each soldier fought with a ferocity that mirrored the honey badgers Jake and Samira had studied. Even when outnumbered, they refused to back down. Back at the command center, Emily's eyes widened as data streamed in from the suit's sensors. "They're doing it," she said breathlessly. "The frequency disruption is working. The shields are destabilizing." General Hayes allowed himself a rare smile. This might actually work. But the battle wasn't over yet. More drones swarmed in, forcing the soldiers to retreat deeper into the warehouse. Ryan shouted orders, keeping his team focused despite the chaos. One soldier, caught off guard, stumbled and fell, his suit overheating just as Emily had feared. Mia rushed to pull him away while Ryan covered them, fending off waves of attackers with sheer determination. Finally, after what felt like hours, the tide turned. The remaining drones faltered, their systems disrupted by the frequencies emitted by the suits. The Krillians hesitated, then began withdrawing, a move no one expected. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had forced the aliens to retreat. As the soldiers regrouped outside, exhaustion etched across their faces, Ryan looked up at the sky. "We did it," he muttered, almost unable to believe it himself. News of the victory spread quickly, igniting hope among those who had given up. Across the globe, people celebrated the unexpected triumph. But Jake knew better than to let optimism cloud reality. This was only the beginning. The Krillians wouldn't take this defeat lightly. On board their mothership orbiting Earth, Vorthak watched the footage of the skirmish with growing anger. His glowing green eyes narrowed as he listened to his advisors explain how the human suits had disrupted their shielding technology. "These creatures are resourceful," one of them admitted reluctantly. "More so than we anticipated." Vorthak slammed his fist against the console. "Resourceful or not, they are still weak. Prepare the fleet. We will strike their capital city and crush this rebellion once and for all." As plans were made aboard the alien vessel, Jake stared at the footage of the battle, replaying it again and again. The suits had performed beyond expectations, but he couldn't shake the feeling that greater challenges lay ahead. Humanity had won a small victory, but the war was far from over. The Krillians wasted no time in retaliating. Within days of their defeat near Cape Town, they launched a massive assault on Washington, D.C., targeting the heart of human leadership. The skies darkened as their ships descended, blotting out the sun with their sheer size. Panic erupted in the streets below as civilians scrambled to flee the impending chaos. Buildings shook from the impact of alien weapons, and thick plumes of smoke rose into the air. Jake and his team watched the unfolding disaster from a secure bunker just outside the city. Screens displayed live footage of the devastation. Fires raging, buildings crumbling, and people running for their lives. Emily worked frantically at her station, attempting to coordinate defensive efforts while Samira paced nervously nearby. General Hayes barked orders into a radio, his voice trained but resolute. "We can't let them take the capital," Hayes growled. "If we lose here, it's over." Jake clenched his fists, guilt gnawing at him. The honey badger suits had shown promise, but they weren't ready for this scale of attack. Even with the upgrades, the suits still overheated too quickly and left soldiers vulnerable after prolonged use. And now, the Krillians had brought overwhelming force. "Sir," Jake said finally, stepping forward. "We need to pull back. If we try to hold the city, we'll lose everything. The suits, the soldiers, even the civilians trapped inside." Hayes turned to him, his jaw tight. "And then what?" "Let them march straight through." "No," Jake replied firmly. "We fall back to a better position. Lure them into the open where we can fight smarter, not harder. We've seen what these suits can do against smaller groups. If we spread them thin, we might stand a chance." Reluctantly, Hayes agreed. Orders were issued to evacuate any remaining civilians and regroup at a fortified location farther from the city. Corporal Ryan Mitchell led the retreat, guiding his squad through rubble-filled streets while fending off waves of Krillian drones. Private Mia Lopes stayed close behind, her movements sharp and precise despite the chaos around her. As they moved, the true scale of the invasion became clear. Giant alien walkers stomped through neighborhoods, reducing entire blocks to dust. Smaller scout units zipped between buildings, hunting down stragglers. The humans fought valiantly, but the odds were stacked against them. One soldier went down, his suit overheating mid-battle. Another was pinned beneath falling debris. Each loss weighed heavily on Ryan's shoulders, but he pushed forward, knowing retreat was their only hope. By the time they reached the fallback point, a remote military base surrounded by dense forest, they were battered and exhausted. Soldiers collapsed onto the ground, their suits powered down to conserve energy. Medical teams rushed to tend to the injured, while engineers worked tirelessly to repair damaged equipment. Jake walked among them, offering words of encouragement and checking on the condition of the suits. "They're learning," Emily said quietly as she joined him. She held a tablet displaying data from the battle. "Their tactics are evolving. They know how to counter us now." Jake nodded grimly. "Then we adapt faster. We find new ways to hit them where it hurts." Samara approached, her face pale but determined. "What happens if we can't? What happens if they keep coming like this?" Jake hesitated, unsure how to answer. He wanted to reassure her, to say something uplifting. But the truth was stark. Humanity was losing. The Krillians were stronger, smarter, and more numerous. But giving up wasn't an option. Not yet. "We keep fighting," he said finally. "For every person who ran today, for every soldier who fell, we owe them that much. We'll find a way." In the distance, the glow of burning buildings lit up the horizon. The Krillians had taken Washington, but they hadn't broken humanity's spirit. Not completely. As night fell, Jake stared at the flames, his mind racing with ideas. There had to be a way to turn the tide. Somewhere, somehow, the key to victory lay hidden, and Jake was determined to find it. The mood in the bunker was heavy. Weighed down by the loss of Washington, DC soldiers sat slumped against walls, their faces etched with exhaustion and defeat. Engineers worked nonstop to repair damaged honey badger suits, but even they seemed drained, their movements slower than usual. Jake wandered through the dimly lit corridors, his mind racing. The Krillians had proven they could overwhelm humanity's defenses, and time was slipping away. Emily found him in a corner of the workshop, staring at a map of the region. "We can't keep running," she said softly, pulling up a chair beside him. "If we don't strike back soon, they'll pick us apart piece by piece." Jake sighed, rubbing his temples. "I know. But how? They've got us outnumbered and outgunned." She hesitated before speaking again. "What if we upgraded the suits with adaptive AI? Something that could predict enemy movements and adjust in real time. It would take time, maybe a week, but it could give us an edge." "A week?" Jake shook his head. "We don't have a week. By then, they'll have taken another city, or worse." Samira joined them, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "Then we buy ourselves some time. Remember those decoys you talked about earlier? The ones that mimic the suit frequencies? Why not use them now?" Jake looked up, intrigued. "You mean deploy them on a larger scale?" "Exactly," Samira said, leaning forward. Send them into cities, make the Krillians think we're launching attacks everywhere. While they're distracted chasing shadows, Emily can finish the upgrades. Emily nodded slowly. It could work. If we scatter enough decoys, it might spread their forces thin. That would give us room to breathe and time to prepare. General Hayes overheard their conversation and stepped closer, his expression grim but thoughtful. "Do it," he said after a moment. "But make it convincing. We need to sell this hard." The team sprang into action. Using salvaged materials and scraps from damaged suits, they built dozens of robotic decoys, designed to emit the same disruptive frequencies as the honey badger suits. Each decoy was programmed to move erratically, mimicking the unpredictable behavior of the soldiers wearing the real suits. Within hours, the devices were ready. Under the cover of night, the decoys were deployed across multiple cities. In New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, the fake signals drew swarms of Krillian drones and walkers. The aliens, believing they were facing human resistance, wasted valuable resources hunting ghosts. Meanwhile, the real soldiers regrouped at the fortified base, preparing for what would likely be their final stand. As the days passed, tensions ran high. Jake spent long hours observing the battlefield data, searching for patterns in the Krillians' behavior. Emily worked around the clock, fine-tuning the adaptive AI systems. Her hands trembled from fatigue, but she refused to stop. Samira stayed by her side, offering coffee and words of encouragement when needed. One evening, as the team reviewed progress, Corporal Ryan Mitchell entered the room. His face was pale, his voice tight. "We just got word," he said. "They've started rounding up civilians, taking them aboard their ships for experiments." The room fell silent. Jake felt a wave of nausea. He thought of all the people who had trusted him, who had hoped the Honey Badger project would save them. For a moment, doubt crept in. What if this was all for nothing? Samira broke the silence, her voice firm. "This is why we fight, Jake. Not just for ourselves, but for them, for everyone who can't fight back." Ryan nodded. "She's right. We didn't come this far to give up now." Jake took a deep breath, pushing aside his fear and guilt. They were right. No matter how dire things seemed, humanity couldn't afford to lose hope. With renewed determination, he turned back to the map. There was still a chance, a slim one, but a chance nonetheless. "We finished the upgrades," he said. "And then we hit them where it hurts. Hard." For the first time in days, a flicker of hope returned. The battle ahead would be brutal, but they weren't done yet. Not by a long shot. The final pieces of the plan fell into place as dawn broke over the horizon. The decoys had done their job, drawing Krillian forces away from key locations and buying precious time for Emily to complete the upgrades to the Honey Badger suits. Now, equipped with adaptive AI and improved cooling systems, the suits were ready for one last, desperate mission. Jake stood in the command center, staring at a holographic map of the Krillian mothership orbiting Earth. "We go straight for the heart of their operation," General Hayes announced, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "If we can disable their central command node, it'll cripple their entire fleet." Jake nodded, though his stomach churned with unease. The mission was risky, nearly suicidal, but there was no other choice. Corporal Ryan Mitchell and Private Mia Lopes volunteered to lead the infiltration team, along with a small group of soldiers chosen for their skill and determination. Each wore a newly upgraded suit, gleaming under the bunker's harsh lights. As they prepared to board a stolen Krillian transport ship, a risky acquisition made possible by earlier skirmishes, Emily approached Jake. Her face was pale but resolute. "The AI should help you anticipate their movements," she said, handing him a small device linked to the suit's systems. "But don't rely on it completely. Trust your instincts." Jake took the device, his fingers brushing hers. "We'll make it back," he promised, though he wasn't sure he believed it himself. The transport ship launched into the sky, its alien design blending seamlessly with the Krillian fleet. Inside, the team sat in tense silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Ryan gripped the controls tightly, his knuckles white. Maya checked her weapon one last time, her jaw set with quiet resolve. When they reached the mothership, the docking bay doors opened without resistance. The Krillians clearly hadn't expected humans to strike directly at their stronghold. The team moved quickly, sticking to the shadows as they navigated the labyrinthine corridors. The adaptive AI guided them past patrols and automated defenses, its soft beeps alerting them to imminent threats. But the ship was vast, and danger lurked around every corner. Halfway to the command node, they were ambushed by a squad of Krillian guards. Energy blasts lit up the narrow hallway as the soldiers fought back, their suits giving them an edge in speed and strength. Still, the aliens outnumbered them, forcing the team to retreat deeper into the ship. During the chaos, one soldier, Private Daniels, was hit. His suit overheated, leaving him vulnerable. Ryan shouted for the others to keep moving while he stayed behind to hold off the attackers. "Go," he yelled, firing blindly into the advancing Krillians. "I'll catch up." Mia hesitated, torn between loyalty and duty. Jake grabbed her arm. "We can't stop now," he said firmly. He knew the risks. Tears welled in Mia's eyes, but she obeyed, following Jake toward the command node. They reached it moments later, finding a massive chamber filled with glowing consoles and pulsating energy cores. Jake plugged the virus Emily had developed into the main terminal, his hands trembling as he initiated the upload. Alarms blared instantly, red lights flashing across the room. Krillian reinforcements flooded in, surrounding them. Jake and Mia fought fiercely, their suits responding with precision thanks to the AI. But they were outnumbered, and the virus took agonizingly long to deploy. Finally, the screen flashed green. Upload complete. The ship shuddered violently as systems began to fail. "Let's move," Jake shouted, grabbing Mia's arm. They sprinted back through the corridors, dodging collapsing debris and pursuing enemies. Reaching the transport ship just in time, they launched into space as the mothership erupted in a fiery explosion behind them. Jake stared out the window, his chest heaving. They had done it, but at a cost. As the Earth came into view, battered but still beautiful below, Jake whispered a silent promise to those they'd lost. Humanity wasn't beaten yet, not by a long shot. As the transport ship descended back toward Earth, Jake stared at the glowing remnants of the Krillian mothership fading into the void of space. The mission had succeeded, but the weight of their losses hung heavy in the air. Ryan's sacrifice weighed on everyone's minds, especially Mia, who sat silently in the corner of the cockpit, her helmet resting in her lap. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears, her hands trembling as she clenched them tightly. When they landed at the fortified base, the surviving soldiers were greeted with cheers from those who had stayed behind. Emily rushed forward, her eyes scanning the group for familiar faces. When she didn't see Ryan among them, her smile faltered. "Where's Corporal Mitchell?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake hesitated, his throat tight. "He held them off so we could finish the upload. He didn't make it." Emily closed her eyes, taking the shaky breath. Samira placed a hand on her shoulder, offering what little comfort she could. The victory felt hollow without Ryan to share it. Inside the command center, General Hayes addressed the team. His usual stern demeanor softened as he spoke. "You've done something no one thought possible. That virus has spread through their entire network. Their ships are falling out of the sky, their weapons are offline, and their shields are useless. Humanity owes you everything." But the celebration was short-lived. Reports began pouring in from around the globe. Krillian forces were retreating, abandoning their operations in disarray. Yet the cost of their invasion was staggering. Cities lay in ruins, millions were displaced, and countless lives had been lost. The scars would take years to heal. Jake couldn't shake the image of the civilians they'd seen aboard the mothership during the infiltration. Rows of humans trapped in glass pods, subjected to horrifying experiments. Some were unconscious. Others stared blankly, their eyes hollow with trauma. Jake and Mia had freed as many as they could before escaping, but not everyone made it out alive. Later that night, Jake walked alone along the edge of the base, staring up at the stars. The same sky that once seemed infinite now felt tainted by the memory of the Krillians' arrival. Samira joined him after a while, her arms crossed against the cool night air. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "We rebuild," Jake replied. "It won't be easy, but we'll find a way. We always do." Samira nodded, though her expression remained troubled. "Do you think they'll come back? The Krillians?" Jake sighed, kicking a pebble across the ground. "Maybe. But if they do, we'll be ready. This time, they know not to underestimate us." The next morning, the team gathered one last time before going their separate ways. Emily announced plans to continue refining the honey badger technology, hoping to create something even more advanced to protect Earth in the future. Samira vowed to expand her wildlife sanctuary, inspired by the resilience of the animals she had studied alongside Jake. And Jake, he decided to return to his research, determined to learn more about Earth's natural predators and perhaps uncover new ways to defend humanity. Before leaving, Mia approached Jake, her expression softening for the first time since their return. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything." Jake smiled faintly. "We did it together, all of us." As the sun rose over the horizon, casting golden light across the battered landscape, hope began to flicker anew. The war had changed them all, leaving wounds that might never fully heal. But humanity had proven its strength, not just in technology or strategy, but in courage and unity. And somewhere, deep down, Jake knew they would endure. After all, like the honey badger, they refused to back down, no matter the odds. Months passed, and the world slowly began to recover. The Krillians had vanished, their crippled fleet retreating into the depths of space. Humanity worked tirelessly to rebuild what had been destroyed, though scars remained, both on the land and in the hearts of those who had lived through the invasion. Cities rose again from the ashes, and families reunited as survivors emerged from hiding. Yet, even in peace, the memory of the war lingered. Jake returned to his cabin in Willow Creek, finding solace in the quiet rhythms of nature. Each morning, he ventured into the wilderness, observing the animals that had inspired humanity's resistance. One day, while sitting near a burrow, he watched a honey badger emerge, its movements bold and fearless as it scavenged for food. Jake smiled faintly, reminded of how much they owed to creatures like this. Samira, meanwhile, poured her energy into expanding her wildlife sanctuary. She opened its doors to people worldwide, teaching them about the importance of protecting Earth's ecosystems. Her lectures often included stories of the honey badger's tenacity, drawing parallels between the animal spirit and humanity's fight against the Krillians. "We're not so different," she would say. "Survivors, all of us." Emily continued her work in technology, refining the honey badger suits and developing new systems to safeguard Earth. Governments funded her research, recognizing the need to prepare for future threats. Though she missed Ryan dearly, she found purpose in ensuring his sacrifice wasn't in vain. Late at night, she sometimes stared at the stars, wondering if the Krillians were watching and planning their return. The story of the Honey Badger Squad became legend, celebrated in books, films, and monuments erected in cities across the globe. Corporal Ryan Mitchell's name was etched into memorials alongside others who had given their lives. Private Mia Lopez traveled to speak at these dedications, sharing tales of bravery and camaraderie. Her words carried weight, inspiring a new generation to stand firm in the face of adversity. One evening, Jake received an unexpected visitor. It was Vorthek, the Krillian leader, standing alone at the edge of Jake's property. His once imposing figure now seemed diminished, his glowing eyes dimmed with something akin to regret. Jake approached cautiously, unsure whether to feel fear or curiosity. "You have earned my respect, human," Vorthak said, his voice low and measured. "Your kind is weaker than ours, yet you possess a strength we underestimated, a will to survive unmatched in the galaxy." Jake crossed his arms, studying the alien carefully. "What do you want?" "To leave," Vorthak replied. "But know this, should our paths cross again, I will not show mercy." With that, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the forest. Jake stood there for a long time, watching the spot where Vorthak had vanished. The threat was clear, but so was the lesson. They had faced impossible odds and triumphed. If the Krillians returned, humanity would be ready. Weeks later, Jake visited Samara's sanctuary. Together, they stood on a hill overlooking the plains below, watching a herd of elephants graze peacefully. In the distance, a honey badger darted across the grass, oblivious to the role its kind had played in saving the world. "They're amazing, aren't they?" Samira said softly. Jake nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah, they really are." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Jake felt a sense of quiet pride. Humanity had weathered the storm, emerging stronger and more united than before. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but one thing was certain. Earth's most relentless predator, the honey badger, had left its mark on history, and so had the humans who dared to follow its example.